In the final 90 minutes of Transforming Transportation, the 22nd edition, I need to do an audio check to see that you are ready for what is next in the program. First of all, can I have some enthusiastic applause? That's given me tingles. That was a beautiful thing. Some gentle, supportive laughter.
How was that?
That's nice. We'll save that for the host. And finally, some cheers because the winner is on the stage. Okay, I now declare you ready for the Lee Schipper Memorial Scholarship Award Ceremony. You are the perfect audience. You are warmed up for your host, Holger Dolkman, CEO of Sustain 2030. Gentle applause. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the 13th edition of the Lee Schipper Scholarship. Lee passed away in 2011. I was far too early. And this session is about his legacy. He was a brilliant researcher. He was professor at Berkeley and Stanford. He was a co-founder of Embark, the World Resources former Sustainable Mobility program. He was a very talented musician, and I can go on and on. But particularly, so he was really like a dedicated, great person, and he loved also to work and was committed also to excellence in research and science. And he loved to work also with young people. And when he passed away, during that time, I was global director at the World Resources Institute. I approached his family, his daughters, his wife, and they said, yeah, let's do the scholarship together with Ramon Munoz Ruskin, the son-in-law who works for the World Bank. And since 2012, we're running also the scholarship. And the scholarship is about the opportunity here to speak, but also with the funds from the Volvo Research Educational Foundation, support there to receive $10,000, a mentoring program, and there's lots of support from all of you. And I really can't thank enough also the World Bank as a host and the World Resources Institute to still keep also this tradition, to give the next generation also a chance also to speak up, share us their research, and give us the opportunity here to talk about this excellence in research science, which is a change, is a policy making. So with that, I like to hand over to Olanike Babola, and Olanike is in fact in Lagos. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it here. But Olanike, can you hear as well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. And besides us as a Guatemalan president, you're the only other person who's speaking here online. So thanks also to the World Bank also to make that happen. So Olanike is a PhD candidate at the University of Lagos. So please also come up also with your presentation. And again, congratulations also to the award.
Thank you so much, Holger. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present on this platform against all odds. Okay, so I'm researching on the multimodal freight transportation mode in metropolitan Lagos, and Lagos State being the largest populated city in Nigeria, has the Lagos Apapa port as the largest port in Nigeria, and it has the presence of the multimodal freight, which includes the movement, including the rail, road, and waterways operation at the port area. Then So because of the recent evolving economic activities at the Lagos port, this has led to the congestion of the port, and also has contributed to the challenges in the socio-economic activities of transportation and transportation of freight around the port, and also to neighboring countries from the Lagos port. So and also this has contributed to the long wait time around the port area, and also the contribution of this has also contributed to carbon footprints in this region, and also this has led to the increased demand in urbanization of Lagos State, and industrialization of the state. So currently, for this research, we're able to combine both quantitative and qualitative method of conducting the survey, and was able to conduct interview with key policy makers within the port area and stakeholders. And then this has led to some findings through the review of the Lagos State policy, and its focus on logistic efficiency around the port, safety, to curb safety and partnership with the state actor, that's the Lagos State security agencies, to stop the activities of touts, disrupting the freight transport movement around the Lagos area, and in the long haul transportation of freights. So basically, the research objectives, which is to carry out a comparative review of the policies or in developing countries such as Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria, has us look at the policies and their focus on infrastructural development, modal shift, PPPs, that's public-private partnership, and then sustainability. So this also had the focus of has helped assess the focus of these policies, which is largely on infrastructural development, and Kenya having its movement of freight through the development of pipelines to lead to a modal shift from road, which was largely dependent on road freight. So also the Lagos State government recent focus on the decongestion of the port has brought about the ETO system, that's ETO, that's the e-call-up system, which has led to the timing, that's scheduling a time frame for different type of trucks access to the port area. So, and also this also led to the Lagos State government recent development of the Lekki Deep Sea Port in the suburb area of the state. And then the Kenya government currently integrates the implementation of the SGR, that's the standard gauge rail, and then also there has been focus lately on the development of this rail line within the northern and the central corridor. Of course, this is currently ongoing and has helped the coastal shipping in Eastern Africa, Eastern Africa, but there is also some limitations with the movement of freight through waterways because of the waterway network in the state. Well, while Kenya is putting up more measures to develop the dry ports around the East African countries, Lagos State is largely focused on the development of designated routes, which is being implemented around the Lekki Deep Sea area, the port area, and also most of these this infrastructural and modal shift has been facilitated through public private partnership of the country. For example, like the Kenya roadside station model being adopted to help the activities of truckers around the northern corridors. Also, some of this partnership has also included, has led to some European nations' contribution to the Kenyan freight transport sector development, and then the collaboration with the Smart Freight Center, which is facilitating the contribution or the importation of electric trucks into Kenya. In Kenya, this the Ghana and Lagos policy is actually the Ghana and Lagos port, that's the Tema port of Ghana, the Lagos Apapa port, and the Mombasa port being compared, has actually exposed that Kenya is doing a lot in the development of its freight system and the transport sector entirely as a whole, in comparison to the Ghana. Ghana is largely dependent on, is 95% operational. The freight transport is operational on trucks. And but recently they are actually working on a modal shift to development of its rail networks. So lastly, some of the recommendations from this preliminary survey has looked into the infrastructural development and integration of the modes, particularly in Lagos. So the Lagos port is largely operational on intermodal transport. Is largely operational. It has an existing rail multimodal system, but operates between the state on export. Excuse me. So the environmental sustainability and initiatives are being put together. That's the conversion of trucks from the fossil fuel, which is about 67% operational in Lagos. Then the rail, we only have 4 rail operators in Lagos State, and we have about over 5,000 truckers. Then about 15% barge operators in Lagos. So this has led to the demand for a modal shift from rail operation, from road freight to waterways, and should be facilitated. Some of the recommendations would need the facilitation of public-private investment and public-private partnership and foreign investment into the waterways development. That's the development of dry ports around in Lagos State. So also the environmental sustainability initiatives such as the.
Olanike, I'm afraid you have to close now. So if you come to close, that will be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Just to wrap up, so still have a couple of sentences.
Okay. So conclusively, some of the strategies adopted is also to look at the stakeholders' engagement and capacity building for the mode operators in Lagos State, and then strict adherence to the existing ATO system at the ports. So also some of these strategies include from some of my recent studies from Sweden, that's the development of adoption of hydrogen-powered battery vehicles and electric trucks to Lagos State. Please, I really want to round up. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for making it so that that time of the evening in Lagos. So with that also, the next scholar is Nicholas Gödeking. He's a senior researcher at the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. You can give him applause.
Over the last couple of years, there has been a real backlash against bus rapid transit. And it is true that many systems have not met all expectations. But I'm going to argue today that we've actually overlooked a really important lesson. Good afternoon, I'm Nicholas Gödeking. I'm a senior researcher at the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. And I'm going to argue today that if we want to leverage the power of fiscal policy to transform transportation, we have to solve what I call the dilemma of fiscal fit. So the key question that I've been trying to solve or address is how can we replicate major urban transit transformations across cities? And I believe that if we want to address that question, we actually have to look at examples where this has happened to then look, well, what practical lessons can we derive? And based on previous research, I uncovered a similar pattern across three very different countries. Colombia, Mexico, and South Africa all experienced major urban transit transformations within a very short period of time. So they're in many ways real pioneers in transforming transportation. And so my question was, why did so many cities build so many new BRT systems within less than a decade? So I traveled to these countries, I conducted dozens of interviews, I did a historical analysis. And what I find is different flavors of fiscal policy that follow a very similar idea. So basically, the policies that are associated with the pattern look really different. That's the main point of this slide, right? There's different fiscal flavors. But the idea behind these policies is always the same. The government's created a pot of money that then local governments apply to for co-financing. And that changed the game in all of these three countries. Now, there's three real key policy insights I want to leave you with. The first is, without national fiscal policy, nothing would have happened. That's something people told me over and over again. And the generalizable pattern here seems to be as follows. In a first step, there seems to be some kind of local innovation. A city does a pilot project, often without national support. In a second step, this pilot then leads to some kind of policy learning somewhere in the national government. In a third step, a powerful actor in the national government issues a national fiscal support policy. And in the final step, it's this fiscal support policy that triggers projects across the country. But it's more complicated than that, because a lot of, and this is kind of the second insight, this isn't working. There we go. The second insight is that many systems that have been financed in this way actually fall short in terms of expectations, in terms of ridership, in terms of costs. And yet I also find that governments, local governments, have actually grown their capacity, right? So it's not black and white. And the third insight is that one of the key reasons I believe so many projects have struggled is what I call the dilemma of fiscal fit. The idea here is that big projects get funding and local needs don't. I want to be as precise as I can. So what I find is that local transit challenges need tailored solutions. But for fiscal policy to be dispersed, there has to be a funding gap. If there's no gap, there's no justification, neither legally nor politically. Now, demonstrating a funding gap is easier when projects are large and standardized. And this is where the dilemma comes in, because from the local sponsor perspective, they can either secure funding for large standardized projects, or they risk losing support for more tailored solutions. And the general result tends to be overbuilt projects that don't align with local needs. So the key insight I want to leave you with today is the following. If we want to replicate major urban transformations, we have to strike the right balance. On the one hand, between leveraging the power of fiscal policy, and on the other, trying to solve what I call the dilemma of fiscal fit. And over the next couple of months, I'm going to try to write this up in a series of research papers. A big thank you to all the funders. If you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And the last scholar is Tom Kortwright. He is PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town. Tom.
Thank you, Holger. Thank you, everyone. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here today. I'm excited to talk to you about a topic that's a little bit different, that's a little bit more street level than I think many of the panels we've been having here in the last few days are. So my name is Tom Kortwright. I'm a PhD student at the University of Cape Town. I also run a research group in conjunction with a number of motorcycle taxi drivers in Kampala, Uganda, called the Lubyanza Research Group. So just a quick update for those of you. Boda boda is the term across most of East Africa for a motorcycle taxi. The operator is called a rider, and the person on back is a passenger. The idea is simple. You step out your door, you call them, maybe you just raise your eyebrows, call them on an app, they show up, you get exactly where you're going. So we looked at this from a number of angles. First of all, in terms of, it was a very ambitious scope, I will admit. So we looked at the political economy angle. How has politicization as well as for-profit actors fueled this growth? What is the demand, right? They exist because people want to use them. And then finally, what are the kind of regulatory measures that might help deal with some of their externalities? So first of all, in terms of methods, we ran a survey, over 900 surveys of residents of the greater Kampala metropolitan area were asked about their trips in the previous day, how they took them, so on and so forth. And I conducted over 40 interviews with a wide range of ecosystem actors from government, associations, apps, and more. So a very brief timeline. Motorcycle taxis exist in many countries across the world. In East Africa, they began as bicycle taxis in the borderlands around 1976. They became motorcycles after liberalization of the economy in the early 90s. And in the last 15 years, financial formalization has led to a continued boom. So in terms of politicization, they used to pay a lot more taxes than they do today. During campaign season, a number of taxes have been stopped or scrapped because there's more than 1 million of them. So they're a very interesting base. A lot of enforcement falls short. Associations are often politicized, taken over by campaigns. The COVID era laws really devastated minibuses. So they only allowed minibuses to operate at half capacity, which doubled their prices because there's no support from government. And that made bodas more attractive. And of course, there's financing. So in terms of financing, the key things to think about here are that there was always financing from local middle-class residents. But what's happened more recently is that with formal financing mechanisms and this drive to take much of the market, they've loosened a lot of the due diligence that was previously required to get a hold of a motorcycle. So from an accessibility angle, when I talk about them and we talk about how important they are, the important thing to keep in mind here is almost 4 out of 10 trips in Kampala are by motorcycle taxi. So this is more than by minibus or by walking, and certainly way more than by people who have private cars or any other vehicle type. Minibuses have been losing share in Kampala for the last 20 years now, and walking infrastructure is rarely attractive. When we think about them also in terms of who's taking them, this is very important. So of course, men have much higher ownership rates in terms of private vehicles. And this means that women are much more dependent on motorcycle taxis, on walking, on minibuses. It's important when we think about that, as well as the income. So what happens is a pretty wide range of incomes use boda bodas. The main thing is, as soon as you get some money, you stop walking. And when you really get some money, you get a car. But all along, you're taking bodas. Why people take them? It's very straightforward. They're fast. They beat the traffic, right? That level of convenience is unbeatable. If you take a minibus, you sit there, you sweat in traffic. Even if you're in a car, same thing. Why people take minibuses? It's for what much wider range of reasons, right? They want to save money. They want to be more comfortable. Road safety is better. But boda's very straightforward. It's the only way to not spend an hour and a half in traffic. So now when we talk about regulation, traditionally, there's been very straightforward road safety regulation, right? Requiring a driver's license, requiring a public service vehicle license, helmet, reflector jacket, and so on. About 1.5 years ago, a new amendment was passed, which essentially outsourced regulation and enforcement to associations and SACCOs, which are savings groups, and basically has them now in charge of it. However, on ground, if you talk to a boda rider at a stage, the majority of them are not aware of this. more than 85% are not members of the associations that they are legally required to be a member of. So in terms of overall compliance, 1% are fully compliant with all laws and regulations. 1%. There's around 2/3 compliance with helmets, but this is very geographically dependent. So if you go to downtown Kampala, where there are police, you'll find 85 to 90%, right? We've been running surveys for the last 3 years, every quarter. We have this data showing it over time. When police come in, enforcement goes up. You go out to the outskirts of the city, helmet wearing is very low because there's very few police. Why regulation is so difficult? Perception of corruption is quite high. 90% of all monetary exchange between boda riders and the police is irregular, right? It is not tracked. It's an irregular amount of money. And the associations themselves come and go quite often and are often linked to other less straightforward goals. So importantly, how do we make things better, right? So there's two angles to think about this. One is from the boda rider perspective. So first of all, like I mentioned, new laws are passed and that information is not getting to the stage level. It's not getting to the street level, right? There might be a handful of association leaders in the room, but much of the time they're not representative. So it's important to get to the street level in any kind of reform. The cost of a driver's license. In Thailand, over 3/4 of motorcycle taxi riders have driver's license. One of the main reasons is because it only costs 1 day's profit. In Uganda, to get a driver's license, it's about 10 days worth of profit. And so that's why it's very low. Stage membership is also very expensive. It can be around $400. So a stage is where you can hang out and wait for passengers. That can be $400. Nobody has that money. That means you're taking a loan, right? Around 90% of riders are on loans. And then from the association angle, there's a need for elections internally, operating rules. We need to reduce exploitative leadership also through having salaries and prevent the politicization that happens. Thank you so much.
Can you put the last, so thank you so much also to the scholars. Just also to announce also there's a new call for application. So, and please also talk to the scholars. And again, also thanks also to the World Bank, WI and all the partners. And with that, also just handing over the certificates. Do we have Olanike still online? So let's see if the magic works. So handing over. Well done. Nicholas.
Thank you.
And Tom. He's running away, so okay. Thank you very much. We'll take a picture.
I have a certificate here. Can I give it to you, Holger? Okay, all right. I will keep it because I'm going to Lagos quite soon. Personal delivery. Thank you. This next session, the final plenary session, will be conducted partially in Portuguese. If you need an interpretation device, they're at the back of the room. Now is a good time to go and pick one up unless you do speak Portuguese. And I'm just going to ask you kindly, please do not take it home. When we finish, bring it back, put it back over there. We counted them. We know how many there are. Thank you. Our final plenary, mobilizing resources for transport solutions. We did not want you to misinterpret our focus for the conversation. So we searched around the World Bank to find out who could possibly crystallize in just 90 seconds what we're going to be talking about. And we found the perfect person. Ben Raya, Global Practice Manager, Transport for the World Bank, will set the scene for our final plenary session, set the mood, and make sure we don't go off track. Ben, it's so good to have you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't know about the 90-second, but I will try my best. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We say in the US, we save the best for last. So purposely, P5 was innovative financing was by design. It's in the last session. So first of all, I know it has been a very 2 long days, but this is an important session. Many of the ministers and policymakers that are here today, a lot of the things that they think about is how do we mobilize finance for all these innovative ideas that you guys are talking about? Where is the money? How do we get the money for it? And then people jump, okay, maybe private sector can do it, or maybe we go to climate finance. So what I'm going to try to do is try to kind of simplify what I call the algebra of infrastructure finance. Basically, at the core of infrastructure finance is balancing your revenues with your commitments. You have certain revenues, and then you have certain commitments. The commitments are the ones that you pay to your lenders or to your investors, or something you reserve for future upkeep. So here, I want to spend a little bit of more time on innovative revenue generation. We talk a lot about innovative financing, but not enough on innovative revenue. So where are the revenue going to come from? Well, some people say we should charge the customer user fees or tolls, or bus fares should go up. But we know that that's not going to be adequate revenue to pay all the returns, all the commitments that that project has. So today, we're lucky to have many people with that experience to talk to us how they raise revenue and how they allocate the revenue and how they structure their financial deals. So number one, I think for policymakers is how can we innovate on revenue? Okay, you have to have a level of tariff that is affordable, that can cover most of the expenses. But what are other revenue sources that you may have? Can you think about non-land value capture, land-based financing? Are there any other advertising? So before you launch into any kind of infrastructure finance, you want to think about, well, where is the revenue going to come from to pay the commitment that you are going into? Infrastructure finance is a very expensive commitment. You have to pay back your loan. If you are working with the private sector, they're going to expect certain returns. And then there is a whole operation and maintenance obligation you have. So doing really a thorough analysis and forecasting of the revenue is hugely important. Then you engage with the private sector. Now, then you get into the financing side. You want to do with private sector. It's no longer about ideology. I mean, the era of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan are way out, way gone. It's about solving practical solutions. We don't have the fiscal space. We need to look for private sector. And then what does the private sector bring? Well, they can bring in a new business model. We heard today from Basigo how they're innovating in a new business model to deliver electric buses in Nairobi. Same thing in India's electrification really was coming through a new business model that reduced the cost and the expenditure to do it. A transit-oriented development, integrating land development and metros that we will hear today from our Hong Kong Metro CFO. To teach us about that. So thinking about different instruments, bringing in different business model is going to be there. Then you also work a lot with World Bank and other concessional finances and climate funds. How do you use these types of funds? Do you want to just take, the 100 million allocated to you from a World Bank loan and do a project the size of 100 million? Or you want to use that strategically, maybe to cover a first loss or to bring in other financial sources that can actually then support a bigger investment. Because it's just, people talk about, okay, I want to do climate finance. The fact of the matter is this financing source is very small and it doesn't have much. So you don't want to use that entire money on a specific project by itself, rather use it to leverage or to provide credit enhancement guarantees or something to that effect that can be leveraged. And also think about how you do, people talk about, for example, issuing green bonds. Well, green bonds, so you may want to look at existing operating infrastructure, like, for example, railways that already have predictable cash flows, or cash flows. You securitize the future revenues and use that to pay the debt. So basically, in a nutshell, I just want to give you that frame so that when we hear today's discussion, you want to have that equation in your mind. Does this go on the revenue side or does this go on the commitment side? So if you do that, I think you will get infrastructure finance right. Thank you very much. And please next.
All right, Plenary, we should be nervous. I feel like Ben is going to be scoring us on how we did with our conversation. Let me bring you onto the stage. We have Francisco Lozano. Francisco, come and find your chair with your name tag. Welcome. Keshav Sharma. Francisco is the president of National Development Finance in Colombia. Keshav Sharma, Secretary, Ministry of Physical Infrastructure and Transport in Nepal. So good to have you. Mr. Michael Fitzgerald, CFO, Mass Transit Railway, Hong Kong, who will be taking the flight to New York in about 34 minutes from now. So you know this session will end on time. Ramesh David, CFO, South Asia Gateway Terminal, and Viviane Essie is the Secretary, National Secretary for Road Transport in Brazil. Do we have all of our panelists on the stage? We do. This is a beautiful thing. Thank you. Viviane, welcome. Please take a seat. So it says behind us, Plenary, panelists, mobilizing resources for transport solutions. When was the last time you mobilized resources? Michael?
The last time we mobilized resources? Well, I don't know the last time we stopped. We are constantly engaged in that activity. We have a huge program of expansion right ahead of us. And therefore, one of the reasons I'm in the States this week is exactly to work out how we can mobilize the necessary resources to make it happen. And in terms of the mix of financing and funding that we need to make it happen, we, as Ben introduced, we have a sort of unusual model where everything we do is based on what the government in Hong Kong calls the rail plus property model, which means value capture from property development and owning and operating various land-based retail malls, etc., which enable us to fund upfront and over time what we do. So we run trains, but we have 16 shopping malls as well.
Sure.
And then we're around the world talking to different banks, bond investors, other entities to help us support everything we need to do. So it never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops.
Yeah. Keshav, the last time you mobilized resources for transport solutions, the solutions bit and the mobilizing bit going together. When was the last time you did that?
Thank you, Femi, for providing me the time. Let me first express my gratitude to the World Bank for inviting me and providing the opportunity to speak in this topic. For the economic development, transportation is prerequisite, right? Developing transport infrastructure is capital intensive and place significant pressure on fiscal resources. However, it is fundamental for connecting communities and agriculture producers to market and essential service, including health and education.
Keshav, I asked you a very direct question because it was just a quick one, so I could say hello to everybody. So the last time, it could have been last week, it could have been this morning. When was it that you mobilized transport resources?
So transport for the resource,
yeah,
this is the basic responsibility of the public sector first. The government should provide the connectivity to the people. Right? About the financing, who finance? Then for the case of Nepal, till now, the public sector is financing for transport infrastructures. But nowadays, because of the pressure on resources, other sectors also, for example, the social sectors, health, education, social security, the portion of government allocation to the infrastructure, transport infrastructure is not up to the mark.
Okay.
There is a gap, right? So we need private sector or alternative financing models, and we are working on it.
All right, that's a good question. That's a good way to answer that. We are working on it. Viviane, you are nodding your head when that phrase, we are working on it. Does that resonate with you? Please go ahead.
Primeiro, boa tarde a todos. Agradeço a oportunidade.
Everyone, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak in Portuguese, to have interpretation so can I understand everybody that is being said by my colleagues here. I guess the main goal of this event is to exchange ideas. I heard the minister, and it's a great opportunity for me to be here. I believe that we are always mobilizing resources. Yes, right now, I am mobilizing resources. We are here with our portfolio, the Brazilian portfolio, to show all of you the opportunities to invest, private investment in Brazil. Right now, we have the largest portfolio in terms of concessions for highways. And this is a continual research, as the ministers well mentioned. I think every moment we have to look for new investors and new opportunities for investment. That's why I was shaking my head and agreeing with you. Thank you so much.
Francisco, I like the idea that your co-panelist, Viviane, was talking about finding new ideas to find these resources. If you're looking at innovative financing mechanisms, what do you have? What do you have? What are you interested in? What are you using?
Hi, thank you very much, Femi. No, it's important to know that the FDN is the Development Infrastructure Bank of Colombia, and that we do two things. First, we structure under project finance to make sure that projects are suitable for private investments, for PPPs. And the second part is that we help financing the projects in order to crowd in different sources of resources to be able to finance the project. So to answer your question quickly, one of the things that we do as development bank is always trying to look what is missing in our market and helping create new products. So other banks and other financial institutions and more investors would come to Colombia.
Ramesh, you're looking very thoughtful. What's on your mind?
I was trying to anticipate your question, but talking about sources of financing, we have the benefit of a 25-year track record. So we don't have a problem raising finance now for anything that we need for. In fact, we've got great AAA financing institutions running behind us, competing for business. But 25 years ago was a very different story. It was a blank canvas, and it was an unheard of business in an unheard of country that had been going through internecine warfare for a couple of decades. So it was a very high risk, and the only reason that the project got off the ground and did so well was it had a fantastic lineup of investors, cum lenders, and we had the multilaterals with the IFC and the ADB combined with very high-profile private sector investors from Europe and Sri Lanka. So it's a totally different landscape from 25 years ago to today.
Sure. Francisco, your face was, this is very interesting. Let's continue. I'm thinking about where you work together in different areas of transport. One of the beauties of transforming transportation is how broad the transport world is. But if you're working together against various different areas of transport, how do you create the financing for that?
Well, first of all, it depends on the projects the government wants to do, wants to undertake. Once you have, like, for example, we had in Colombia a large toll road concessions program, then we had to think which were the right financing products for the project. So at that time, we decided that plain vanilla senior debt and also a liquidity line. And then those are the kind of products that no one has, because there are for few cases, 20, 40, that no commercial bank would be interested on doing. So as a development bank, that's part of our role, to fill those gaps and make other banks comfortable with the structures, so they can go and finance the projects.
The phrase that comes to mind, Michael, is alternative revenue channels.
Alternative revenue channels, yeah, it's vital because we've been discussing today, and it's I think not a controversial thing to say, that railways on their own, public transportation on its own, doesn't always generate the necessary profit to keep it going in a sustainable way. So the way we've done it is by engaging, like I said, in this sort of generation of a stream of ongoing recurrent income. And that comes from, for example, the shopping malls that I mentioned that we have in Hong Kong. And these are part of an integrated development. So when we work on a new project, we're typically working together with other property developers to build essentially a new community. There will be a new station, a new railway line, but around it, there will also be new apartments, there may be offices and a shopping mall. And all of that together will generate cash upfront to repay the funding we need to raise, but also it will generate recurring income over the future years in order to repair, upgrade, replace everything that we have built. So that is a key part of how we do things. And aside from that, we've expanded into providing railway services in other countries as well, mainland China, UK, Australia, Sweden, in order to generate a little bit of diversification. But yes, non-fare revenue away from your core transportation business in your core home is essential if you don't want to run into financial problems.
I love the Keisha, that you are a highway engineer talking about transport. So you've elevated into then deciding how policy should be made, but you come from a very practical background. Can you talk to us about Nepal, how you are looking for this sustainable financing? Can you give us one example, one story?
Yeah, for me, it should be considered in two ways, right? Mm-hmm. First, road infrastructure as a basic need of the people, first connectivity, and then its commercial aspect, right? So for the first steps, the government should manage the fund for basic connectivity. Then only when it goes for return on investment, then the banks and the private sector comes. So we don't have that type of very successful story so far because of some constraint, like our roads, they are not even now, they are not like very commercially viable for the private sector. And we tried for alternative financing model, for example, hybrid annuity model. We are all set for the study of some roads, financing through hybrid annuity model. Advisory, transaction advisory study has been completed, and this is under the World Bank financing, World Bank support, and we are going to implement this model soon. And for that, there should be a local capital market strong to provide infrastructure. Funding is not like commercial funding to the sales, funding to other type of infrastructure. The return on investment is long period, it covers long period. So we are making policies to enable internal capital and making our projects commercially viable. This is not the story like already completed. The story is now begin.
See, that's even more important, I think. It's like to being really candid about, I can't tell you it's working well yet. but you said yet or so far, which is really important. Viviane, can you talk to us about the burden of
Sobre o ônus
building infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure? What does that mean? What do we need to understand?
O Brasil é bastante grande, né?
Brazil is such a continental country. We have over 60,000 in terms of roads. We are the largest exporter of soy, the fifth largest of soy production, of grain production actually in Brazil. And we saw our agricultural production in the last 50 years growing in an exponential manner from 38 million tons in 1975 to 320 million tons last year, with the forecast in terms of growing for 30% from last year to this year. But it was always the increase of the agricultural production. It changed from region. Used to be in the south and southeast region. Now it is in the central part of the country, which we have to expand our infrastructure. And the main model that we have are the highways, the roadways, and we have to emphasize in areas which are no longer very productive. This is already a huge challenge, even more that we're trying to expand and apply in terms of public investments. We need to have a PPP with the private sector. We had a modernization of our concessional projects. We publicize a new public policy in terms that will tell the market which are the highways that the federal government really want to provide a concession, in which way we will do that, giving some kind of traceability or forecasting. The history of concession in Brazil were 1 to 2 actions per year. We already had 10 from 2023 to now. We still have another 15 actions already scheduled in terms of 840,000 kilometers, with a huge investment potential in terms of 160 billion reais. It shows the relevance of having all the public and private investments together, but we need to find new ways, an alternative that is not only a mere concession. Now we have a concession with the World Bank, trying to improve a program that has already been developed by the bank in the past, and we want to improve it, we want to enhance it, so that we can facilitate our procurement with public resources, doing more with the resources that we have, and develop new forms of PPPs that are not exactly a concession in the model that we have, or the 15 auctions that we have, or 5 which already have a set auctions scheduled. There will be some concessions from maintenance. The logistic corridors will receive more investment, and the feeding venues will allow them to have more and offer more security for traffic and transportation.
One last time, if you have a question that you want to ask about mobilizing resources for transport solutions from our plenary speakers, please do go to the microphone and we will get to those straight away. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Michael Replogle, founder of the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. And I haven't heard anyone speak here about congestion charging or time and place-based road user fees as a way to not just mobilize resources for transport, but also to better manage and operate the existing system for much higher efficiency and much better environmental performance.
It may be more to do with who we have on our panel as to why we haven't addressed it. How is congestion in Nepal?
It is obvious in all urban areas. There is no question that there is congestion. So Nepal also, we have congestion in the urban area, and our main highway, that is which connects Kathmandu to other parts of the country. So like congestion pricing, we have just built a road tunnel to nearby Kathmandu, and we are having that pricing. Either you go through the congested road or use the tunnel and pay the tolls. This is near to completion, and from next year it will be in operation. We are trying on congestion paying by the users.
I'm going to go from Nepal to Sri Lanka. When I asked Ramesh if he looked after the best port in Sri Lanka, your response was?
We're the oldest. Yeah, so
I love the honesty.
New kid on the block anymore, but we do keep setting benchmarks,
Sure.
and we do that through different ways. In 25 years ago, we were by far the best in terms of productivity and the way the efficiency that we operated. Today, we can't handle the biggest ships afloat. That has to go to another terminal. But then we continue to innovate through digitization, through changing, the industry is notoriously male dominant. So we try hard to bring women into the workforce through active programs. And of course, all of this underlaid through the decarbonization efforts. Because again, when you're talking of old equipment, 15, 20-year-old equipment, they're all fossil fuel based. And now the challenge is to electrify that and to fund that.
There's a great power of coming with the last big conversation of transforming transportation, because we can take people on a journey where they leave, they're thinking about your final words, and then they go off into their jobs, back to their real life and back into transforming transportation, hopefully in an everyday way. So I'm going to get you to leave our audience with something that they will remember, that will help them as they try to mobilize their own resources for their transport projects. Mike. The bankers are like, you can ask me first. Francisco, you go first. Go ahead.
No, I think that something that it may sound not that clear, but it's always the most important thing in the industry of the banks in a way is credibility. I mean, you really need credibility. You really need to be serious in order to be able to get the funding you need, to get the projects to go to your bank to ask for the funds. So I would say that the most important thing to have is credibility. Also, not only in the financing, but in the structuring part. Even most important, it's credible solutions, credible structures, structures that are win-win for everyone, are like the key to success.
Viviane.
Transport, as we know, is extremely relevant, not only for food security in the case that I mentioned about Brazil, which is the largest export of grains, but also for the safety and security for national integration, especially at a country a continental dimensions. It is important that we keep in mind that we might offer secure and safety conditions for our user capacity. Correct, we might reduce in terms of 40% of car accidents. These are figures that we take in consideration when we have a concession, when we have a PPP that will provide more investment, especially when we define the traffic in the urban areas, when the highways are going through these urban areas. We also have something that we consider quite relevant in terms of national integration, as I said, to offer access to education, to health and jobs for certain specific communities that live in remote areas, which highway is the only means for these population to have access for a health treatment. And the cost of transport, for us to be able to transport with the right value, with the proper value, mainly reducing the emission of pollutant in all our projects. The 15 projects of our concession portfolio, they have zero pollutant emissions. I left some material there in case any of you might be interested in knowing more about the Brazilian program referring to transport.
Thank you so much. We have lots of booklets just to one side, so please come to the front at the end of our session. Ramesh, the final thought from you.
I think as a PPP operator, what I would really like to leave governments and the public sector with is that continuity and consistency are key to the success of any public-private partnership. Investors, whether they are public or private, don't want uncertainty. And I think that was alluded to by many of the government speakers that we had, particularly the minister from Malta, who said that they had accommodation with the opposition on certain long-term projects. So transportation and infrastructure projects are typically transcend the political life of a government.
Yeah.
And I think it is extremely important that the volatility and the element of change gets taken out to bring us to convey, to have a bipartisan assurance of consistency in any award that is made.
Michael.
I think I would certainly echo the points about consistency and credibility. I think that's vital. Your funding sources absolutely want to know how you deal with things. They don't want to have to find out things afresh every single time. I think that helps you in the next point I'd want to make, which is about diversification of funding sources. That is crucial. Do not rely on any one particular source of funding or of financing. Make sure you've got friends all around the world who invest in different forms. Don't rely on any one, because they can come on and come off for causes that are nothing to do with you, your project, or your country. And I think, beyond that, I think the point I heard this morning from Fuat from JP Morgan is absolutely correct. There is plenty of money out there, plenty of it. It's a matter of matching that funding, the availability of funding, to the projects we have. And so we need to have integrated thinking. Financing is not to be added on at the end as something, we'll just do it like last time. No, planning should involve financing from day one so that you can structure a deal which will have a ready market. Because if you do that, it is available.
Schipper.
Yeah, I talk about the challenges of financing in infrastructure projects. That is also the opportunity for the private sector to come, right? So we are making the enabling environment for the private investors in our infrastructure projects. So as Michael said, I also heard that in the afternoon session, there is no problem of money. Money is there, funding is there, finance is there. So we are making the enabling environment, and I urge the investors, the developers present here and listening us to come to Nepal for Nepal's infrastructure development. We are making the enabling environment, and at the last, I call the investors to not only invest in Nepal's infrastructure project, but also enjoy the beauty of Himalayas. We are full of Himalayas, right?
So we have a call to action, a positive message about there is money out there, and booklets from Brazil to pick up. And we leave you with so many riches. Yes. May I wrap up so that Michael doesn't miss his plane?
Not only that. Maybe.
Sorry, Michael, I tried.
You may think that Nepal is landlocked country, but I also urge Michael and Romesh.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we are landlocked country, but we have the office for shipping, and we are revising our laws. We are making consultation with the MOUs. So even the opportunity for maritime also.
Do you know what we proved here with this plenary is there is always more to say at TT, and leave something for later. Plenary, we thank you so much. One of the hardest jobs ever at the end of a conference is to be the last plenary, but even worse or even more challenging is to be the audience who's still here. So applauding yourself and the plenary speakers. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. My God, you're going to make the plane. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. All right. There's a photograph. I am not in that photograph. I'm at the side. You can Photoshop me into it later. Thank you so much. So this is such a massive conference. Thank you, plenary speakers. I really enjoyed you. Appreciate your inputs there. It is such a massive conference that always at the end of TT, we get two heavy hitters to basically talk about how it all came together, who needs to be thanked, and why you should come again next year. Rogier van der Berg is the Global Director, WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities, and Nicolas Papier-Tibege is the Global Director of Transport for the World Bank. This microphone is yours to share. Gentlemen, thank you.
So there's always more to say, Femi. Where are you? There's always more to say. And this is why you need to come next year again, right? And this is a very humble job that we're having. Nicholas, come here. I really want to thank you. I really want to thank the World Bank. You're fantastic partners, fantastic hosts. And I'm so happy that we have so many people this year again in this room. And as I understand, there's even an overflow room, right? So we're doing very well, very excited. Thanks a lot for this great partnership. I'm going to say a few words, and don't worry, I'm not going to be too long, but I want to highlight a few issues that really came to the fore over the course of the 3 days. We're outgrowing this space, and it means something. It means that we build a community over 22nd editions. We build a community, and we are building, because in the beginning, the first session, I don't know who of you was here, but we raised our hands for the newcomers, and we think it's around 30–40% of newcomers. So I hope the transport sector is continue to refresh, right? We talked a lot about jobs and economic growth, which are at the forefront of government concerns, as always. But even in this more challenging political context, it's clear that the future of transport will be greener, and it needs to be more resilient, inclusive, and efficient. And even amid all the political uncertainty that we luckily avoided to talk specifically about, we need to stay focused on the transition that will come inevitably. And indeed, some of the disruption, that's what we heard in the discussion, some of the disruption we are seeing is actually aiding the transition, like how electric vehicles are more affordable in many places because diesel fuel has become more expensive, and how green industrialization is now an opportunity to boost local manufacturing. So I have the opportunity and humbly lead WRI's cities program. So I talk about cities. So you can expect always me to talk about cities. That's my role. And it's important because the world is urbanizing rapidly. And Africa is leading the way in this. And we are building the infrastructure of tomorrow today. And for many cities, it means that 75% of the infrastructure still needs to be built. So we can do it in the right way or in the wrong way. And the cities, these urban economies, really need to work for a much larger percentage of the population in order to drive national economies and to make national economies work. So the decisions and the investments in these cities will impact people for decades. But with that, we also see that there's actually a lot of road safety challenges coming our way. We had a great panel on road safety. We see much more cars, 1 billion cars to be added in the next 20 years. And we see 1 zillion motorcycles. Right, there are 18 million cars, I learned, at least from the Minister of Indonesia. 18, I don't know if these are the most recent numbers, but 18 to 20 million cars in Indonesia and 130 million motorcycles. 130 million motorcycles. You know, let that sink in. 90% of new registrations, as we heard in Kenya, are 2- and 3-wheelers. And I lived for 7 years in Nairobi, and I've seen how important that motorcycle is for startup entrepreneurs. So good to get road safety right, that is what I learned. We need to get the basics right. Speed management, law enforcement, better design of streets, safer crossings. We talked about a lot of technology. We talked about education, but in the end, it comes down to very rudimentary things. And when we talk about education, I really love to paraphrase Kelly Larson from Bloomberg Philanthropies. Education without reinforcement is entertainment. As many noted, it's not about only what kind of vehicles are on the street, but finding ways to move large number of people efficiently, affordably, inclusively. And that includes the enabling of active mobility, pedestrians, cyclists. I always say, and I know some of the people here in the audience, they hated me talking always about the Dutch bikes, but I'm a Dutchman. I love the bikes, I believe in the bikes, and they do a lot of good for us, for everyone. Yeah, thank you. So we heard, I think one of the things that came back over and over again is how excited people are about e-buses around the world. The excitement, right? It's an opportunity to create a brand new public transport experience. It's clean, it's inclusive, you can charge your phone, it's comfortable, it's exciting, right? So, and the customer feels like they are investing in me. I think that's really a shift in the conversation from where we were, I think, last year. We hear this excitement. And how we can make public spaces better so buses, cars, and my favorite bikes and pedestrians are not contradicting each other is needed. It's about giving people options to move, as the president of Guatemala said. And we need to adapt our spaces where needed, such as Times Square, that was for cars, as we all know in the past. And I learned that recently Shakira gave a concert for 40,000 people. We heard how crucial it is to make transport work for all people, for more people, for women, for the disabled, and not just as riders and pedestrians, not just as riders or pedestrians, but as entrepreneurs and employees. The transport minister from Sierra Leone told us that female drivers are better drivers. Yeah. And they collect more fees as conductors. Yeah. So to get all this done, we need a lot of money. That's clear, right? This is what we heard. We need a lot of money. And luckily we are in the bank. So I had a lot of calls for money. I heard a lot of calls for money. And the fee finance, of course, the key to allow supply to actually meet demand. And the demand is skyrocketing. We heard a lot about the demand side. India is electrifying 80,000 buses. Jakarta is acquiring e-buses. East Africa scaling through private companies. So international finance and guarantees are super important, are crucial to crowd in, as we heard, private sector money to meet upfront costs. And we see how success looked like with the winner of the Sustainable Transport Award, the e-bus system in Dakar. So once more, a big applause for that. I'm as a leading part of a research organization, I'm very excited about the learning and the exchange south to south. Also very excited that happened during the inaugural ministerial roundtable that you organized. It is fantastic, it resonated, the challenges that these ministers faced. We had 16 ministers in the audience of TT this year. That's fantastic, the leadership is here. But we also saw the launch of the Global South Policymakers Exchange Platform. We had a very late night discussion on Monday at the WRI office, and we saw policymakers from Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Kenya, South Africa, India, and Indonesia to talk about how they can learn from their different EV transitions and that accelerates everyone. And that's really important because many of these countries hold a piece of the complete puzzle. I'm looking forward. I'm almost done. I know that you had long 2 days, including ourselves, so don't worry. So looking ahead, right? So we brought us, this community together. But we also have a responsibility. We are the transport community of the world. Just before the TT, May 10th, the president of COP, Andrea Correa do Lago, just issued a call for action. I don't know if you already read it, but he referenced, and bear my Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, but he referenced mutirão. It's a Brazilian concept. Do I pronounce it well? Yeah, sufficient enough. Mutirão, a Brazilian concept about coming together to solve a common problem. And we cannot allow inertia, individualism, and irresponsibility to win the day. As we come together in the Amazon in November, let us make sure that transport delivers the change and solutions needed to contribute to healthier environments and avert further damage to the planet, and build resilience to extreme weather events that we saw impacting the lives of many people in the north, in the south. And we want to make sure that it happens on every continent in the same way. So we can step out as a community on the future of transport to create jobs, cleaner cities, and safer streets, to raise ambitions on delivering NDCs, and to support Brazil in delivering a successful COP in challenging times. And as Ani said, Ani Dasgupta, the president of WRIDE, at the opening, we must continue to seek the path forward, following the successes that so many of you have contributed to, and focus on what delivers change to people. Thank you very much for being here together for the 22nd time, some of you for the 22nd time. Thank you for the newcomers to be part of this community, and thank you for inspiring each other over the course of the 2-3 days that we spent together. Thank you very much, and thank you once more.
So I've attended many editions of Transforming Transportation, but this year's event has truly been exceptional. The energy and the buzz here at the World Bank are incredible. So a big round of applause to all our attendees, our speakers, and our colleagues. Over the past 2 days, we've tackled long-standing challenges, road safety, congestion, and access, while exploring fresh solutions like AI, digital innovations, and e-mobility. But as many have pointed out, technology alone isn't enough. This year, we focused on moving from vision to action, because big ideas mean little if they collect dust on a shelf or on a stage. As Chris Bonnet reminded us, implementation is everything. It's hard to summarize such a rich discussion. I could take a cue from Omer Fatih Sayan and ask ChatGPT, but I won't do that. Here are a few takeaways that resonated with me that will take us forward in the coming months. And I hope they landed with you as well. First, transport connects people to jobs and drives economic growth. Public transport expands access to opportunity, and it needs skilled workers and strong institutions. Second, investing in local skills is essential. Modern transport systems require advanced expertise, and we must ensure capacity is built on the ground. Third, education, advocacy, and enforcement matters. We all share a vision for better transport, but issues like road safety need to be higher on government agendas. And of course, transport is critical to trade, to food security, and to broader development goals. Now, they say it takes a village to pull off a complicated event like this. But if you've ever worked in transport, you know that it takes not only a village, but also a mayor, a traffic engineer, 3 consultants, a big committee to review the findings, a project manager to solve the committee's problems, and at least one young person to say, have we thought about AI? In all seriousness, it takes a huge team spread across the World Bank and WRI to pull off this conference year after year. In fact, I have to run right now to a planning meeting for TT26. So I owe all of you a huge thank you. To our guests, your engagement. We had a huge, diverse crowd and a great mix of first-timers and returning attendants, as Roger was reminding us. To our incredible speakers who challenged, inspired, and shared invaluable insights. To our WRI partners, to my partner in crime, Roger, and the fantastic WRI team. 22 years of collaboration and counting. To my own team for working so hard since May, making preparations for all of you. And finally, to our fantastic moderator, Femi, thank you for leading the conversation with skill and passion once again. So have a good rest of the day, a good rest of the week, safe travel back, and see you next year.
Are we getting a slide with everybody who contributed to this? Yes, there we are. So a warm applause, because this is what it takes.
My last job as your conference moderator is to tell you to fill out the survey that is coming to your email box. It will be active for the next 10 days. Put your ideas that you thought about over the last 2 days into that email. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.